Hikikomori, an outcast from society, someone who stays home all day, usually in a single room, with little to no contact to the outside world. They are a complete and utter shut-in. That is the situation that 22-year-old Sato Tatsuhito finds himself in after moving to Tokyo for college, but one day he realizes that other people exist, and his social anxiety immediately kicks in. He drops out of school and hides in his apartment only to never really recover. It's been 3 years since then, and he lays all day and a half days wondering where and how it all went wrong. And the answer he ends up finding, or rather the way he rationalizes all this to himself, is in conspiracies. Imbo. He thinks that the NHK, originally a television broadcasting network in Japan, is actually a secret organization that is purposely trying to turn people into neets. They broadcast anime so that people are more likely to turn into otakus and seclude themselves from society. These are objects in his room telling him all this, and he somehow justifies it all to himself in his head without realizing the rabbit hole that he's already fallen into. Except one day, a girl named Misaki shows up at his front door and goes, hey, I can fix you, you know? And so she fixes him. The end. Welcome to the NHK is one of the weirdest, most thought-provoking shows that I've ever watched. It's an anime that I feel so unqualified to talk about, but that's also kind of why I have to talk about it. I mean, I basically wrote Cornell notes for this shit, and by that I just mean bullet points, but I gotta use it somehow. It was produced by Gonzo in 2006 and is surprisingly ahead of its time in terms of mental health and anxiety and all that yucky stuff. Ew. But I think the thing that I like the most about Welcome to the NHK is that it constantly jumps from one thing to the other. Visual novels. We know Doki Doki Literature Club, we know Higurashi, Nekopara. Sato finds out that his next door neighbor is actually his previous high school junior Yamazaki, who is a total fucking degenerate a cultured man that watches magical girl shows, reads doujins, and collects figures. Hey, he's just like me. His room is completely decked out with anime memorabilia, including this really fucking creepy life-sized figure, and he also sleeps with a body pillow at night. By the way, I've been trying to figure out which body pillow to buy. Do I go with Bunny Girl Senpai or the stupid-ass Naruto pattern? Make sure to vote in the comments. This is where Sato is introduced to the world of visual novels. Yamazaki explains to him that visual novels are a form of gaming that make a shit ton of money. And yeah, they never go on sale on Steam. Clanhead's been out for like over a decade and it's still $50. So they team up in order to create a visual novel that will shock the entire world. And also so that Sato doesn't just rot in his room all day now that he has something to actually do. So Yamazaki gives him some games to play for reference so that he can start doing a little bit of research, because how else are you supposed to make a visual novel if you've never played one, right? Yeah, Sato ends up rotting away anyways. We see him become a total degenerate as tissue boxes pile up in his room, and he just can't help but look through all those glorious CG computer graphics. I've definitely been there. Ever heard of Mercy from Overwatch? Ever heard of Raven from Teen Titans? And by far, the craziest part about this episode is that by the end, Sato somehow ends up taking secret photos of schoolgirls and their upskirts. What the fuck, Japan? This is when I realized that Sato is a terribly flawed character. He basically remains this way for the rest of the anime too. This isn't some uplifting shonen where the characters actually grow. This is Welcome to the NHK. Nihon hikikomori yokai watch. It's an anime where we see Sato make small steps in order to stop being a hikikomori, but then he ends up falling right back down the rabbit hole almost every single time. At first, I thought it was hella depressing, and it still is, but after finishing the show, reading through all of Oyasumi Punpun, and learning how to use my air fryer, I'm just like, damn. Life is pretty depressing, especially when it's just constant failure one after the other, and they just laid out raw for you. These two were not good to finish one after the other, by the way. I wasn't lying about my previous statement. I really did finish Punpun after this show and then learn how to use an air fryer, but god damn, it was not the healthiest for my mental. They're both series about failing and failing and failing and spiraling and But if I had to pick one that makes you feel shittier, Punpun definitely takes the cake, because NHK keeps you going with its funny ha-has, aka jokes, aka comedy, comedy. NHK is able to mix and match and weave together those really serious moments with stupid comedy. It gets really ridiculous sometimes too, like when Sato accidentally ends up in a group suicide pact with his former high school senpai, and when everybody is about to jump off the cliff, Sato, being the only one who doesn't want to KYS, he's just like, well, I guess this is how it ends. He really does not try to do anything to stop it. It's almost disappointing. But then, one by one, everybody pulls out and finds a reason to live. They realize that people will grieve for them. This kid realizes that stealing money from his parents' wallet to buy a Club Penguin membership to fuck some kids up on card jitsu is not the end of the world. Even Sato's senpai, her boyfriend pulls up in a boat and proposes to her on the spot, so now she wants to live too. And because Sato now has no chance with her romantically, he really wanted to get some, he goes from being the only one that doesn't want to jump to being the only one that does. It's moments like these where the show flips itself on its head. It teeters on this line of really deep, dark emotion and le troll. And you're just like, should I be laughing at this? Do I have a dark sense of humor, or do I just like saying slurs? This is true philosophy. And it's outrageous stuff like that that balances out those really lethargic, quiet, and somber moments. It's not just maid cafes and video games. There's many times where Sato is just sitting in his room, dicking off and doing absolutely nothing, just passing the time and reflecting on his past. Even though he's only 22 years old, he's made a lot of meaningful memories to mull over, especially in high school. There's a reason most anime take place in high school, and that's because it's a time when you make some important-ass memories while still developing as a person. And this show is sort of relatable for me in that sense because I just graduated high school this year, and right now everything is sort of unsure. Like, I don't know where I'm gonna be 3-4 years from now. I could totally become a hikikomori like Sato, or a professional Tricky Towers player. Who knows? It really feels like it's down to fate. For example, if you leave a like on this video, like whooshy whooshy whoosh, some butterfly effect shit might happen and my entire future could change. Sometimes I look back to when I was in elementary school and I got in trouble for saying what the fuck, when in fact all I actually said was what the what. And I go, am I living in a simulation? And honestly, if this anime came out today, I fully believe it would air that sentiment as well. But before I went on that giant tangent, I was mentioning how I really like how NHK sort of sporadically jumps from one thing to the other. And this is where I have to talk about pyramid schemes. No, not the Egyptian kind. It's also called multi-level marketing. If you don't know what that already is, think Wikipedia. There you go. Towards the latter half of the show, Sato gets a call from another one of his former high school classmates. She invites him over for some coffee to catch up, and Sato explains the situation. I am neat with 2 E's. Hearing this, she invites him over to a seminar of sorts, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where she claims that he can change his life for the better. But oh no, Egyptians. Sato is roped into a pyramid scheme, and it's fucked because just like in real life, these schemes exploit people who are down on their luck and in need of money. That's basically where Sato is. He was already a hikikomori, but also a couple days before this, his parents called him up on the phone and were like, hey yo, bro, we can't pay for your shit anymore. And when this happened in the show, everything was just a whole load of pain. You hate to see it too because Sato is the main character. You wish he got some redeeming Naruto treatment, but he's just so goddamn flawed. It's not even completely his fault either, because when you take a moment to start looking at the other characters that surround him, you realize that they're kind of just using him too. Whether it's to emotionally dump on someone that's always there to be your guy best friend, or to achieve your dreams of making a visual novel by roping someone else in with unlimited free time to write your script, or a crazy pyramid scheme so that you can benefit yourself. It always ends up feeling like Sato is just being used, and then when he tries to get out of it, they use the fact that he's a hikikomori against him. You don't want to fall into that rabbit hole again, do you? That's what I thought. Now help me beat this level on Skylanders. Even Misaki, the girl who wants to fix him, remember her? Even she ends up in that boat of characters that use Sato, and it's not like one of those fun sushi boats either. She makes him sign this contract so that he can participate in her experiment, where they basically just do lectures informing Sato of how he can begin to recover from his degeneracy, and honestly, it sort of works for a little bit. Sato is able to get out of his house, even if it's just for little things, like those crazy pizza-flavored Pringles. But then, it's revealed that Misaki was using him the whole time to feel better about her lack of purpose in the world. And after that, everything just... balls. And after that, everything just spirals even further, which I won't even try and get into for my sanity. My point is with this video is that Welcome to the NHK is a very unique anime. It reminds me of this picture from SpongeBob. It's a show that I had to rack my brain over how to talk about because it's just so many different things. But if I had to pick one, it's fucking It's fucking degenerate as shit. The characters are degenerates, the people watching this anime are degenerates, and the dude who wrote it all tried to tell me he doesn't look like a man of culture. It's shows like this that reframe my entire view of anime. It's so far away from anything that I've ever seen, and I've seen some pretty deep underground shows like Psyche K, which is 100% comedy. But this show, it's like a third slice of life, a third drama, and a third this song. But yeah, that's my video about Welcome to the NHK. If you've seen it already, let me know what you think about it in the comments. I've seen it on a lot of people's Mal profiles listed on their favorites, just casually sitting there, so I had to check it out. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it, give it a shot. Give it a shot. There's a lot I didn't mention in this video, like the part where Sato goes, "It's NHK in time." So make sure to stick around all 24 episodes for that.